Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Business can be hard. Business can be tough. Business growth can be even tougher. We have an amazing, incredible guest today. Anna McGovern, welcome to the Selling Show.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here with you.
So we have a little bit of a client case story to share about kind of where you came in to work with us. And then we'll also talk about the empire that you're building and how you came to do that kind of work. But I want to start with something that you shared during your presentation, which was absolutely brilliant at our last client event. And you talked about the teachable mindset, whether that's with us, whether that's just in your professional association, with your colleagues, with your peers in your industry. Talk about the value of the teachable mindset, or hit some of those same chords that you did when we were together.
Yeah, David, it's such an important topic. There's one thing that I've always known to be true. I'm smart enough to know I'm not that smart. So it's extremely important to be open to learning. And I've always been a student, a lifelong learner, and I'm always open to learning from others and surrounding myself with people that are smarter than me and have something to offer me. And so being open is really about having that humility to say, I don't know everything, and I'm open to learning something new in order to advance myself. So I think that's the criticality of that coachable mindset.
Yes, absolutely. And I think also one of the things that you put very humorously, but extremely real, is this aversion to sales trauma. Sales trauma, I think, is what you called it. And just not to give away the punchline, but at some point early on in our relationship, you said, if I have to sell, I am out of here. Now, you're on the Selling Show. Talk to us about sales trauma, which is a very, very common thing, by the way.
It's really interesting. It was my very first meeting with Teresa from Do It MBA. And she asked how I felt about it, and I certainly wasn't expecting the question because I don't need to sell, right? And it's like she starts talking about selling. I literally was squirming in my chair and shifting as I'm talking to her. And I said, wait a minute, is this about sales? If this is going to be about selling, then we might as well end this right now because I'm out of here. And she was completely taken aback. She was like, where is this coming from? She's trying to understand. And then she said, well, let me ask you, when you do work for your clients, do you issue an invoice? I said, yes. And she said, do they issue you a form of payment, either, ACH or, credit card or what have you? I was like, yeah, I receive a payment. She goes, well, Anna, those are sales. She goes, you may not like it, but that's a sale. And so I kind of laughed at my silliness at that point. And, then we started to reframe and talk about it. But really, up until now, every piece of business I've gotten has been through my warm connections where, I sent out a broadcast email. I'm in touch with my network to begin with. And I'd be like, hey, I started doing this. And it's like, oh, I've got an introduction for you who needs help. And every single one of my projects came that way. But then a funny little thing happened on my way to my late 50s is that all of these decision makers, and I don't know how that happened, all of my decision makers and all of my high-powered friends started to leave the workforce. And suddenly I'm in a situation where I need to make new friends, right? And this has been the crux of it. I was really despondent over the summer because I wasn't taking any initiative and stuff wasn't falling in my lap. And I'm looking in the pipeline and I'm thinking, wow, come November, December, this sucker is totally bone dry. What am I going to do into 24? And that's when I came upon Do It Marketing. So that's the first big initiative that I took. I finally thought it's time to invest. If I want to grow this business, if I'm serious about it, I need to invest in myself. So I started to do it. And quite frankly, I'll be the first to admit, I spent the good portion of the first month or so just kind of taking in and learning. And Teresa came back and, sort of gave me that kick in the pants. Like, what are you doing? Tell me the progress of this, and this. And I'm like, well, I'm overwhelmed. I'm still learning. And she said, that's because you're too busy consuming and not busy enough implementing. I gave you, certain action items. So please execute. I think that was that light bulb moment right there when I was like, oh my goodness, I'm being held accountable here. And it's not about consuming and just kind of twiddling my thumbs and learning. It's about implementing. And, quite frankly, several of my peers in the group that I've had one-on-one meetings with have all said to me, the people that don't succeed here are the ones that don't implement. And the minute I turned it around, okay, suddenly my pipeline went from 4 deals, in September, all the way to 14 deals today, So suddenly there's activity. And with that, I get that shot of adrenaline. Like, I do have the power to get over my sales trauma. And it's not really about sales. It's really about reframing how I think about delivering value. And so that was what turned my head around, is to rethink that I'm not really selling. I'm not a used car salesman. I'm not trying to sell something that's going to benefit me. I'm actually creating value for someone else.
So good. And oh boy, so much. You just laid out so many good nuggets there. I just want to address one or two of the things that you just said. We always think of our approach in mentoring and this whole experience that you're going through. This is a gym. It's not a library. And I think as long as you keep those 3 words in mind, gym, not library, right? Gym is where we go, we work out, we work the muscles, we implement, we lift the weights, we get the exercises done, right? And in this case, the exercises is the business development activity for your business. This is a gym experience. It's not, oh, let's read some books and let's put our feet up and let's go get a latte or a smoothie. The people getting lattes and smoothies in the library, they are not knocking down the targets the way that you are. So I think you said, and we can do a little update here on the 14 deals. A few weeks ago, you had 3 discovery calls in the course of 1 week, I think, or maybe a couple of weeks. 3 discovery calls with a potential of 750K. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So going from where you were, let's see what falls in my lap. Let's tap into my amazing network. We have to stop relying on whatever business falls in our lap, whatever referrals may or may not come in, whatever word of mouth happens to drop some people out of the blue. Actively being in the driver's seat of your business development activities. Talk about that shift and how that feels as shifting into the more proactive, you now have your hand on the spigot, so to speak.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels fantastic. The big aha moment there is how little talking I am doing, right? And that's huge. I don't have to talk about how incredibly wonderful I am. I had one discovery call with a brand new client, someone who didn't know me, but it was somebody I reached out to who said, hey, let me refer you. So this guy is talking to me. We had a 30-minute discovery. I think he spoke 25 out of the 30 minutes that we were on. And then I was asking a bunch of questions. And when he ended, he said to me, Sarah said, you're worth your weight in gold. And I'm happy to say you've lived up to the hype. And I'm thinking to myself, there is a huge lesson for me here because I didn't talk about my credentials at all. All I was doing was asking him questions about his pain points, and he was articulating them. And through the power of my questions, he could surmise that I lived up to the hype of the person who referred me. So that was a big lesson because I used to be so busy telling people, here's what you need, rather than hearing, here's the pain that I have. Can you address this particular pain? And chunking things up. I think the reason we're getting some traction now is because I'm not boiling the ocean with some of these clients and overwhelming them, right? I'm taking it in manageable bites so they don't get overwhelmed. And that's also making a huge difference because, we're addressing it based on their priorities rather than I know best and I know where you're going to need to succeed. I'm trying to draw them to that conclusion. And it's taking a bit of a, finesse, and I'm practicing it daily. And what's also helped me is, the rehearsals, the role plays, within the group. We've been practicing. I had a couple of role plays, one with Teresa, one with Sandra Kavanaugh, another one, and they were masterful. First of all, the art of reading, I gave them a little bit of guidance and then they were able to play back for me. And really, they played hardball and it helped me to anticipate where the no was going to come from and to be able to address it ahead of time. So it's going to take a lot of practice and I'm in it, right? So being coachable and teachable is a good mindset for me to have because I'm in it to learn. And, I'm going to keep hopefully making progress.
Well, we know you're going to keep making progress. We interrupt this interview with an important announcement. If you're committed to better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees, get over to doitselling.com right now and grab a copy of my new book. That's the deal, kids. Grab a copy of the new book and then get all the bonuses, companion tools, trainings, and downloads at doitselling.com. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. That's how it works. I'll see you over there. Let's talk about your business because the context of all of this, of course, is your business, your smarts, your fabulousness. So tell us about Pond View Consulting. Tell us about what you do, who you do it for. And I think that'll make some of these stories just kind of make a lot more sense when we kind of click this into place around you and your business and your clients.
Oh, sure. So Pond View Consulting, David, we are a supply chain and procurement consulting and advisory firm. I've got 35 years of supply chain experience as a practitioner. And I started this business full time in early 22, in January of 2022. I had it as a side hustle since 2020, but pursued it full time the last 2 years. And really our target is the consumer packaged goods industry and anyone that serves that particular industry. So think beauty, think personal care, home care goods, food and beverage. That's the kind of business that I'm in. And, supply chain is now a mainstream topic ever since COVID. Everybody understands the pains of the supply chain. And, my role is to help companies to find that value, to drive the value out of their supply chains, because quite frankly, it is a differentiator for people who can compete and run their supply chains efficiently. That is a competitive advantage in the market for them. So that is what we do. And that's the market that we're trying to serve.
And then talk a little bit about the kinds of projects and maybe a couple of success stories and some real big wins. You can name companies, you can not name companies, doesn't really matter, but share just some of your favorite projects from the last year or two.
Yeah, I was working with a fairly young beauty company based in the UK. And they came to me because they needed help in procurement. They thought they needed help in procurement. And so we worked with them to take a look at their P&L, quite frankly. After we signed the NDA, we said, let's take a look at your costs. And so we developed a cost model for them. And we showed them region by region, customer by customer, SKU by SKU, product family by product family, where their contribution margins were. And in some areas, they were hemorrhaging. In some areas, they weren't leveraging it. They had 2% of their sales caught up in supplier damages. And at the end of the day, our cost model and our help, with showing them how to manage their costs led them to an 11% gross margin improvement. So that was one of the biggest success stories.
And the 11% gross margin improvement, can you use one of our favorite questions? Can you put a number on it?
In terms of how much money that was?
Yeah, like how many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars did that mean to them?
Yeah, that meant $12 million in incremental gross margin.
Now, as you were completing that project, I think this is the one where we may have talked about this. You said, I didn't charge them nearly enough. Is that the one?
That's the one.
Talk a little bit now that people have the context of the brilliant work that you do. Talk about thinking small, pricing too low, and how that has evolved and how that has corrected itself. We've had a Anna marketplace correction, I think.
Just to give you a sense, I was asked for another client to do a white paper, a study about a manufacturing modeling exercise. And it wasn't about engineering. It was, a scenario plan where, what if we wanted to do an in-house manufacturing and build a greenfield site, basically. And so I wrote a 15-page paper, which didn't take me very long, right? I did a little bit of interview, I did a little bit of research, and I charged, what I thought was, this is a good piece of income, for not very little work, right? And then I went back and, of course, the client took it and they paid me for it and it was fine. And then it started to gnaw at me that, I wonder if I charged enough. And, this gets back to the old adage about Picasso taking 5 minutes, to paint a painting. And he tells the client, it's $5,000. What do you mean $5,000? It took you 5 minutes. No, it didn't. It took me 30 years. And this is where I have missed the boat. It's that plumber that comes into your house and knows just the right pipe to knock on. I don't have that appreciation for my value just yet, right? So I took that same piece of paper that I will tell you I charged $3,000 for. And many people told me they would have paid $15,000 and $20,000 for a piece of research like that. And my view was, well, it didn't take me that long to do. Okay. And that's because it took me 35 years of experience to get to that point. Right. And so I was charging based on, well, it didn't take me that long. This is a good solid piece of work, like mindset of like a per hour or a per, an hourly fee instead of a value-based fee. So I think I still struggle with that. And this is where I need to determine what is the right value proposition that I bring and how do I charge enough for it? So I'm looking forward to learning to have the confidence to actually charge what I'm worth. I've made a lot of mistakes and I'm learning. And I always try to identify the value proposition. So, what is the size of the problem? I had another client last year who had so basically they had an inventory accuracy issue that was impacting 8% of their gross margin, right? So that was a $9 million problem for them. And, they needed help. Now, this was a pretty big project, right? And we were in there for 9 months and we collected $450,000, but we helped them solve a $9 million problem. So determining what is that fee structure that's going to deliver the right value is something that I need practice in. And I know that there's plenty of room there for me to improve. But yeah, that first problem, that first example I talked about, I charged $60,000 for the project, right? And I delivered $12 million in value. And in my mind,
absolutely.
It was like it took me 6 weeks. So I thought, hey, I'm way ahead. But I didn't understand. I didn't understand the value I was bringing.
Right. So powerful. One of the quotes that I love that you shared is, nothing grows out of the lack of humility. Nothing grows out of the lack of humility. So even what you just said, I know I've got room to grow. I know I need to do better at this. Because I'm guessing, before you came in to work with us, you're like, you know what? I'm doing pretty good. I got to solve this lead generation problem, but my pricing is good. I know what I'm doing. I have 35 years experience. I'm charging a couple thousand for this, couple 10,000 for that, not realizing that whole new vistas might open up. So lack of humility is not something that you have. You have this amazing humility and openness to learn and openness to do things differently. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. Now, let's also talk about all these topics that you've shared and your business, which is supply chain / procurement. So you are a purple unicorn in our world, Anna, because the procurement mindset, like when any of our consultants goes, oh, you got to sell to procurement. You got to go talk to the people in the purchasing department. It's like, oh no, don't send me to procurement because you're a tough cookie. You're a tough customer, right? You're used to being on the procurement side. Got to get the best deal, got to lower the price, got to maximize the ROI, can't just take the first price that's presented. So talk about both on the selling side, as you are now a professional salesperson, and that's no longer yucky or gross or disgusting, but then talk about some of the programming from the procurement side of your brain that is butting up against that. How do you manage that inner conflict?
Well, it's interesting because it's really a fine line. There are many people in the profession that cross that side of the desk often because, you have to understand both sides of the equation. And as a professional buyer, if I'm worth my salt, then I am looking for value. Right? So as a professional buyer, I don't want to pay the lowest price. I want to pay for the best value. That's what I'm trying to cater to. I'm trying to show my clients, this is the why. This is the what's in it for you. This is the value proposition. This is the proposal. And so it really is an easy sell at that point if you understand the mindset of the buyer. So that should play to my strengths, quite frankly, is that I understand what they're looking for as a buyer. And that's what I have to learn to leverage, going forward. And it's not, that is an old fashioned, way of looking at things. And buying is so much different now. It really is about delivering the goals of the business. And, I want to make them be the hero to their business.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. Have you ever had the thought, because we have some training on this and we have some mindset shifts around this, but I think you're uniquely positioned to answer my question here. When you put a proposal together now and you're no longer thinking small and you're no longer pricing too low, does that little voice come up in your head going, wow, I would never pay this much. I'm putting a number on this piece of paper that I myself on the other side of the desk, I would never pay this much. Do you ever have that inner battle anymore or not really?
I don't, because what I'm starting to realize is the client that's the right fit understands the value. It's the wrong fit client that won't pay the price, right? And if they're not going to understand the value proposition, they're not really a client that I should be doing business with. Now, there's always going to be the exception to that rule, but no, I don't think that way any longer.
Amazing. Let's talk about your $350,000 success story. That's not what people think it is when I talk about Anna has a $350,000 success story. So tell us, please, about your 350K success story, talking about client fit, client no fit.
Well, it's almost hard to say it without choking, but it's a success story because I lost this deal. This has been a client that I've been toiling with since March of this year. And quite frankly, I knew in my gut that this was not a client I wanted to do business with. But who am I to say no to an opportunity? Right. And I think having that confidence to be able to walk away from clients is a huge win for me. But I was toiling, and we put tremendous amounts of time into putting together a proposal, and they kept stringing us along until earlier this week, I put an ultimatum. I said, if you don't sign, we're going to need to walk away. And they still refuse to sign because they're like, we need to do this and we need to do that. And they've just been stringing us along. And I finally had the courage to walk away. I mean, $350,000 is a huge piece of business, but I felt a huge sense of relief because, as one of my colleagues in MBA said, you have to have a chance of success factor. John Doring in our group, he said, if the chance of success is that you're going to have 10% enjoyment of working with this client, then think of it as only a $35,000 loss and not a $350,000 loss. So what a remarkable piece of advice there, right? And then he quoted Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam, and he said, put it in the rearview mirror. So the way I'm looking at it, I'm winning because this creates room for me to work with the right fit client, and that's so important. And quite honestly, I feel a huge sense of relief and this unburdening because it's been a monkey on my back. And I finally, shucked that monkey off my back. And that's why this is a win.
Huge win. Huge win. I know it's still fresh. And I know it's still kind of messing with your brain cells a little bit, but you have such a healthy perspective on it. And I think this ties back to what you said earlier also. One of our mantras is, a strong pipeline makes you brave. And you now have the strong pipeline, and we're going to continue to strengthen and fill and refill that pipeline so you can say no to the non-ideal client. You can say no to the nitpicker, price shopper, foot dragger, the people that are just going to be nightmare clients. I always say that it's like a dating analogy. If the dating doesn't go well, which is the prospecting and sales process, becoming a client, if the dating doesn't go well, the marriage will not improve. They're not going to suddenly become this amazing spouse when they were a nightmare on the dating scene.
Exactly. But
so, Anna, this
really feels good.
I know, right? It does. And I think that having that pipeline behind you and then continually working that pipeline and then filling that pipeline, that is going to have you in charge of who gets to become a client, right? Who has the privilege of applying for the job description Anna's next client, Pondview Consulting's next client. So tell people how they can get in touch with you, the website, LinkedIn, as many resources as you want to share, and we will make sure to put all of those in the show notes. How can people get more of your brilliance?
Absolutely. You can visit our website at www.pondviewconsulting.com and feel free to book a discovery call, or you can reach out on LinkedIn, Anna McGovern. I'm very active on LinkedIn, another way to get in touch with me, or via email, anna@pondviewconsulting.com.
Brilliant. Well, Anna, it is a pleasure and a privilege to work with you, and I cannot wait to see what we create next, not to mention a breakthrough year next year. So thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing your mojo with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you, David. It's a pleasure.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.